Breaking news! There is now only one gender. Man. Everything else is just whatever isn't that. Gender slop, not worthy of its own definition. If you're not up to date, allow me to enlighten you. If you go to the Johns Hopkins University LGBTQ glossary page, you'll be greeted with this message. Johns Hopkins strives to create a campus culture that is inclusive and welcoming for all gender identities, sexual orientations, experiences, and viewpoints, and we are committed to ensuring Johns Hopkins is a place where LGBTQ people feel supported. The LGBTQ glossary serves as an introduction to the range of identities and terms that are used within LGBTQ communities, and is not intended to serve as the definitive answers as to how all people understand or use these terms. And then they say, upon becoming aware of the language in question, we have begun working to determine the origin and context of the glossary's definitions. We have removed the page from our website while we gather more information. What? That doesn't follow. The language in question? Oh yes, people on Twitter were talking about the definition of lesbian that was found here. What was it? Lesbian. A woman who is emotionally, romantically, sexually, affectionately, or relationally attracted to other women, or someone who identifies as part of the lesbian community. Bisexual women may or may not feel included by this term. Well, that seems uncontroversial. Oh, oops, this is an archived version of the page from March 2022. It was updated since then to be more inclusive. Much more inclusive. Although Johns Hopkins apparently don't know by who. It's a mystery. It just happened. Lesbian. Sexual orientation. A non-man attracted to non-men. While past definitions refer to lesbian as a woman who is emotionally, romantically, and/or sexually attracted to other women, this updated definition includes non-binary people who may also identify with the label. Excuse me, I gotta take a piss. Could you direct me to the non-men's room? We're not going to have the sign of the dude and the dude with the skirt on toilets anymore. Instead, it's going to be the stick dude and a stick dude with a big red line through him for the non-men. Bad news too. A side effect of there being a billion genders is that it's going to be very hard to be gay. If everyone's got their own unique one, and being gay means being attracted to someone of the same gender, do the maths. Maybe that's why they're using an umbrella term. Maybe they know about this little trap that happens when everyone's a snowflake. Phew. Anyway, before we talk about it more, what's gay in here? For comparison, how is that defined here? Wait, there is no definition for gay. But you saw people talking about it on social media, right? No, you didn't. You saw this. Gay man. Note, not gay sexual orientation, like how lesbian was labeled and didn't specify a gender. A man who is emotionally, romantically, sexually, affectionately, or relationally attracted to other men, or who identifies as a member of the gay community. At times, gay is used to refer to all people, regardless of gender, who have their primary sexual and/or romantic attractions to people of the same gender. Gay is an adjective, not a noun, as in, he is a gay man. See, they couldn't have a definition for just plain old gay, because then they'd have to define it in terms of non-women to have uniformity, and then their page would be full of references to non-men and non-women, with no definition for what a man or woman is. What they have here, though, is mostly accurate to common use, I would say, except identifies as a member of the gay community. That was in the original lesbian definition, too. What does that even mean? Oh, I'm not gay. I'm not a non-woman attracted to non-women. I just hang out with that crowd, so I have the F-pass. The closest thing they had to gay, purely as a sexual orientation-only definition, is this. Same gender loving, SGL. How some African Americans prefer to describe their sexual orientation, seeing gay and lesbian as primarily white terms. Same-sex loving is also in use. I feel like using sex would have been called out if not for African Americans being mentioned. And few people know this, but the KKK are actually looking to upgrade their white robes to be rainbow-colored. And they won't be including the black and brown stripes either. This made me laugh when I first read it, but it's a thing. Like, it's hilarious, but it's a term in use for those reasons. that I found a bunch of examples of when I looked, so it's a fair inclusion in a list of language people use, really. However, this is not an anthropological resource. It is not a linguistic analysis. It is part of a set of, quote from their page that links to this glossary, resources for anyone looking to learn more about gender, sexual, and romantic identities. They try to cover themselves by saying, this glossary is meant as an introduction to the community and is not the definitive answer as to how everyone understands these terms, and yet they simultaneously recognize that it is not looked at in that way and would not be used in that way. Why do I say that? Well, that disclaimer would have covered their original definition of lesbian and mean they didn't need to butcher it to make it acceptable for whomever disagreed with it. Lesbian, meaning a woman into women, is in very common use by self-identified lesbians. Its inclusion in a list of terms, as used by the relevant people, is correct or accurate even. They could have kept it and added the little bit at the end about the non-man stuff just because there are one or two people who use it that way and have that worldview. But no. They had to wipe that away because this list wasn't intended to just be a primer on how people use those terms. It's a list of how the most just absolutely whacked out elements of the LGBTQ community want you to use them. They have to say the previous definition was wrong and uninclusive because they weren't just recording how these words are used. They're presenting a list of words and how they should, according to God knows who, be used. Which is unsurprising, because it's often challenging to simply describe things. Not in terms of finding the words, but because some internet-addicted schizo might try to fuck your life to pieces if what you're saying doesn't fit their internal model of how things are and or should be. Hey there, kiddo, here's the gay dictionary. Don't you like the rainbows? It's the gay version of words, just so you understand other people better and we can build bridges, you know. Oh, if you ignore it though, you'd better watch your back. Back to the specific thing that popped off, the lesbian definition. It is true. Defining a lesbian this way includes more people. Anyone who doesn't say they're a man. But it is so hilariously cucked. Women totally destroyed, no recovery possible. You're not a lesbian because you're a woman who likes women. It's because you're not a man and like people who aren't men. You know, your masculinity's leftovers, all that other stuff that piles up outside the bounds of manhood. If you dumpster dive in that detritus, you're a lesbian. A low-quality pseudo-gay. I'm not going to sit here and say that women are being erased and it needs to be stopped. J.K. Rowling was right. Nah. Let them fight. This is beautiful. The civil war of the non-men. All these weirdos tearing each other to shreds and leaving the rest of us the fuck alone, if only for a minute. Only on Twitter and one university campus. And by the rest of us, my brothers and sisters, I don't mean straight men. Although apparently we're the only people who truly exist and everything else is just categorized relative to us as warped shadows of our platonic forms, I mean anyone who doesn't feel the need to be validated by other people, society, online glossaries on a university website, and so on, to feel like we are who we are. If people, air quotes here, need their identity to be recognized, and different people define their identity using different scales, standards, systems, whatever, someone does have to be told, no, yours isn't real. Because part of what you're calling yourself is the model, right? To some degree, this stuff is relative. Man, as a point or section on a broad spectrum of gender, is different to man as opposed to woman in a binary system. When someone says to another person who says they're a man and there are only two genders that they're wrong, it's a spectrum and they're simply at a masculine point on it, that's misgendering, is it not? It's saying someone's self-identification of their gender is wrong, or at least inaccurate. You can't do that, sweetie. As much as the progress people say they're inclusive, their models say that the non-inclusive people's identities don't exist just as much as the non-inclusive people say theirs don't. Societal recognition of the correctness of your mutually exclusive worldview is a zero-sum game, and inclusivity isn't possible without getting rid of or changing the people who don't fit. It's branding. Inclusivity is a misnomer, a label for one more mutually exclusive approach to things. It's not really an umbrella that can fit everyone. The only way to include everyone is to not have a top-down, sanctioned gender ideology of the day at all. Practically no one wants that, though. And that's the real reason you've got to get to the kids as early as possible. You can't have any of them being outside of what your form of inclusion allows. And that's where, as many people, including certain Call of Duty players, have correctly identified the fight as being. God help you if you're a parent. Holy shit. Your children are pawns in a war between a couple of armies of ideologically possessed demons. As a childless gamer, my thoughts don't mean much, but I'm pretty sure I would homeschool and ideally pay for private tuition. I'd rather risk a socially awkward kid than whatever the hell the education system's going to be pumping out for the next however long. For this kind of slap fight amongst adults, though, here's my strat. I am who I am. Fuck off. The second you want to do something to me, or stop me from doing something, that's different. Seismic shifts towards doing that stuff to me? Okay, that too, I'll need to do something. But I don't care what your justification is if that's happening. And if I'm being fucked with, I'm not going to play some weirdo word game to defend myself or get what I need. When I get involved with these weirdo word games, this particular kind of trash, it's for fun. And as a bonus treat, ridicule is very strong against people who care a lot about how they're viewed, so maybe you can have a crumb of influence as a treat sometimes. Yeah, there can be concern when this is going on at a university, particularly one that may well pump out a doctor you rely on for your health, or a researcher who will redefine how your health issues are dealt with. However, one, these aren't little kids. They have a worldview already going in, and that'll provide some resistance. And plus, you'd hope overall they're prioritizing accuracy, that they're doing this because they have a calling to help people, at least partly. Money's a big deal, but partly. And two, if anything's interfering with the nitty-gritty of medical practice, let's be real, we're not doing shit about it. That's a fight for experts. It's kinda out of our hands as people bumming around on social media. Cross your fingers. Hope you don't wake up from your tonsillectomy with something new between your legs, sorta deal. For now, I'm just wrestling with being a man in a non-man's world. But, as usual, that's just another one of my harmful opinions.